Yeah, what is up, everyone? Happy Monday. Very excited that you can take the time out of your busy Mondays to spend it with us tonight. Really special show tonight. Our guest, an incredible athlete. He's been on the show before. It's actually been a long time since we had him on.
Yeah.
Man, almost going on 2 years. But this weekend, something pretty incredible happened. Our guest, Adam Campbell, completed the Hardrock 100. In and of itself, this accomplishment is insane. It's huge.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the race this weekend. We were not there, but we obviously followed it because it's quite special. But what makes Adam's story beyond impressive is the fact that he had a near-death fall off a mountain very recently, just later 2016, and was able to recover, train, and get back to the mountains and accomplish this incredible feat of completing the Hardrock 100. Adam is joining us tonight. It's going to be a fantastic show. I can't wait to hear his stories on how he made such an incredible comeback. So sit back, relax, grab your beverage of choice. Episode number 172. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Episode number 172 of Ginger Runner Live begins now. Ginger Runner. Yes, what is up, everyone? So excited for you to be joining us tonight. Really amazing show planned for this evening. Episode number 172 of Ginger Runner Live begins now. Of course, my name is Ethan, and I'm also joined by
Kim. And as always, you guys, I will be in the chat room. So if you guys are new to the show, we pull questions out of the live chat room for our guests. So if you guys have questions for Adam tonight, just make sure you're asking them in the chat room.
So that's the best part about being live, is that we get to interact with you guys pretty much on the fly in real time. Now, let's kind of set the stage a little bit. The Hardrock 100 took place this last weekend. It's this incredible mountainous race in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado. It has over 30,000 feet of gain. I believe it's 33,000 something feet of just gain. You're at altitude. You reach 14,000 plus feet. It's notorious for storms. All sorts of just crazy weather patterns. It's technical, it's rugged, it's brutal. Major credit goes to all who's towed the line. And this weekend we had a lot of friends that were there that completed the race. Our guest from last week's show, Katie Grossman, she managed to crush it. She completed the Hardrock 100, which was her goal. And it's a real special story. There's some incredible stories that occurred out there, including the winner, Kilian Jornet, popping or dislocating his shoulder at mile 15-ish.
It was early, yeah.
Popping it back in and winning. Still managing to complete the entire race in first place. Legendary story. The lead woman went off course for, I believe it was like an hour, almost 2 hours. Yeah, Caroline Chavarot went off course, managed to backtrack, get back on course, and still completed in first place. Just incredible stories. And so major credit goes to all who were there and experienced the race. Our guest tonight has a unique story, a special story. I'm going to introduce him because I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. I'd much rather talk to our guest, because I can imagine his stories are going to inspire you more than me talking about them. So welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. Yep. Our guest tonight, Mr. Adam Campbell.
Yay!
Thanks so much for having me, guys. No, it's and your description of the race was pretty accurate. And yeah, my God, we could just I want to spend the entire show talking about Kilian. What a guy.
I mean, all weekend, those were the rumors, or those were the stories that were flying around, is like Kilian is still in first, and like his arm is tucked into his hydration. But it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, and not to take anything away from Joe and Mike, who are also having world-class performances out there against him.
Yep.
But to be fair, we're incredibly fortunate to be in the era of Kilian, and as much as you don't want to like bow down before your competitors, it really is truly special what we're witnessing, what he's done and what he continues to do in the sport, and it's amazing. And he's like, on top of being this phenomenal athlete, he's just like a great guy.
Yeah,
like he's a beautiful human. Like it's so we're really, really fortunate to have him as part of our sport, and we get to do races with him. So
I was gonna say, you've raced with him before. At Hardrock 2 years ago, you raced with him, and you've raced with him elsewhere. So you've got a chance to actually run with him.
Yeah, no, I've had the chance to. So I used to be on the Solomon team, and so I've done camps with him, and So I've had the chance to spend some time outside of racing as well. And a couple of years ago, 2015, I got to run. Him and I went off the front at Hardrock, and I got to run the first almost 40 miles with him before he decided that he was going to go win the race. Yeah, and that probably wasn't the best race strategy for me. Feeling great after that, but it was really cool to get to run with Killian up and over Handy's Peak, and yeah, it was really special. So yeah.
I mean, that was when we had you on the show, because it was also the year that you notoriously got struck by lightning.
No, that was the year before.
Oh, it was the year before. I'm sorry. I'm getting my years confused. But you still, I mean, that's also what's wonderful about having you back on the shows, because you have just such incredible stories as it is. Last time we had you on, we talked about you getting struck by lightning during this race on the top of, was it Handy's that it was?
Handy's,
yeah. Which is just
the going joke is most of my friends' moms and wives don't let them play with me in the mountains anymore. No, I joke about it, but I do also want to just add a serious element to that. But it's what we do does have some element of risk to it at times. Especially when you start moving more in towards the more mountaineering and scrambling side of things, but even people that are just going out for trail runs, we have the ability to travel light and fast, and there's something really beautiful and wonderful about that, and I love it. But because you're traveling light and fast, you can get yourself out there quite far, with very little on you for actual, without a safety plan and real backup. So it's something that I've become quite a big advocate for. Is carrying a few extra little bits with you, just that you can really save your life, because I'm a testament to that. And my pack has gotten just a wee bit bigger recently, for sure. So,
I want to make sure that I preface tonight's conversation with the knowledge that Adam is an extremely accomplished ultra runner. He trains in some of the most rugged mountains in Canada. Also a very experienced mountaineer, alpinist, has summited, I don't know how many peaks you've summited. I don't even know if you could count, but many. You have experience in all levels and abilities. So I don't want people to think like, oh, Adam is a newbie to the sport. That is not the case whatsoever. So I just want to make sure that we talk a little bit about that. How long have you been really studying the mountains and enjoying the mountains on this more endurance front?
Yeah, well, I mean, so my actually, if you want to go like way back, I actually have a bit of a different background. I actually was raised in Lagos, Nigeria. So I was actually raised on the beaches of West Africa. Yeah, which is, so it's not it wasn't mountainous, but I spent my entire childhood outdoor, engaging with nature. So we didn't have TVs growing up, and spent my childhood surfing and sailing, and so you get a real appreciation for the power of nature from a young age. And then through high school, when I came back to Canada, I started cross-country skiing and got really into whitewater canoeing and kayaking, and actually did a little bit of, I was an apprentice guide for Outward Bound, leading 40-day canoe trips in northern Canada. So once again, you're just developing this real understanding of nature and how to look after yourself and how to be careful in those environments, and a real respect for them and a deep appreciation for them as well. And then I really got more into the mountaineering side of things about 10 years ago. When I transitioned out of, I then competed on the national team in triathlon. So I competed on the World Cup circuit in triathlon.
Right.
For a number of years. And when I transitioned out of that, I got more into the mountain running scene and started doing more climbing and backcountry skiing at the time, and taking that fitness and slowly trying to build up my competence in mountain sports and my skill set. And it's really fun to mix your fitness with these technical skills, and something that it's a lifetime of development for sure. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, over the last few years, it's just been so much fun to follow your journeys, because it could be anything from ski mountaineering or mountain summiting, depending on the season, because you live in such a wonderful, beautiful part of the world. It's just so great to follow. Do you want to get to some live viewer questions? Yeah, let's do that before we start getting really
before
into this.
Go for before we get too deep here. Adam, you just mentioned about that your pack is now a little bit heavier, that you're bringing a little bit more with you. So there was several questions in the chat room from Scott and from Josh asking what's new in the pack and why. So what else have you been bringing with you post-accident?
Yeah, for sure. It depends a little bit on the nature of the trip and where I'm going. So where I go a lot in the Canadian Rockies, we don't actually have cell signal. So I bring an inReach with me on a lot of my trips. I always have a little bivy sack with me and a little emergency little fire starter kit, just in case. And also a lot more careful now about telling people where I'm going and what my plans are. And if I'm going climbing, I've found that I've started to bring a little bit more gear, whereas before, things I would have used to solo, I might bring a rope now and a sling or something just in case.
Got it.
But for the most part, it's bringing the inReach with me on a lot more of my runs, and making sure we have a little emergency first aid kit. It can go a really long way for sure. And also just packing like an extra jacket, and because especially in the Canadian Rockies, the weather can turn really quickly. And the one thing that I really noticed when I had my accident is when your body goes into shock, even on a warm summer day, you can get really, really cold, and trying to keep warm can save your life for sure.
Just talking a little bit about your accident, I think that's where we can probably start, because I think this year's Hardrock, the journey for you to get here, I just can't imagine. So last August, you just told me it was August 31st exactly. What happened? I mean, was this a typical outing for you? Was this a multi-day stage adventure with you and some friends? Let's kind of set the stage of what the accident was.
Yeah, so as I was saying, I've sort of, in the last couple of years, been quite inspired by these mountaineering objectives and taking fitness and trying to do these massive link-ups, because I think that, we use speed in the mountains. It can be really interesting, the things you can do. And there's a famous area in Canada called Rogers Pass. It's a world-famous backcountry ski area. It's actually the birth of alpinism in Canada, so mountaineering. And it's got some really, really iconic peaks on there, and some of the classic climbs in North America. And it's this beautiful quartzite rocks, so like really good quality rock for the most part, and quite a stunning zone. It's right off the Trans-Canada Highway too. And
wow.
There's something called the Horseshoe Traverse, which is essentially linking up 14 peaks in Rogers Pass. And it's really cool because when you're at the start of it, you can actually see the entire range in front of you, sort of horseshoeing around back to the mile being almost less, so the finish being just less than a mile away from you on the other side of the road. So it's really just like aesthetically so spectacular. And so the idea was to try to link up these 14 peaks. It'd never been done in a single push before. Wow. The previous fastest time I'd ever seen was 3.5 days. But I kind of figured that, if we start adding running into the element and real speed and going a little bit lighter, that it could probably get done in a single push. Maybe not necessarily 24 hours, but I'd sort of budgeted 24 to 30 hours for it.
Yeah.
A bit of continuous movement. And I was fortunate to get Dakota Jones and Nick Elson from Canada, who's, I'm not sure people know who he is, but it's what we call an undercover brother in Canada. He's a real crusher. I mean, he just finished third at the Broken Arrow Sky Race last year. He set the speed record on the Teton Traverse, and he's an incredibly accomplished mountaineer. He's a rock guide. He's also an incredible runner.
I think we've talked about him on the show before because he is such a badass, and he's come up in conversations with multiple guests. Yeah. Yeah.
So he's one of those guys who I think like people in the know are like, he's the man, but he's not a known person, if that makes sense. He's like,
right. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
He's one of those guys like the core. If you're into mountain sports, you're like, Nick Elson is a total crusher.
Yeah.
He doesn't care. Like he doesn't want to spray about himself. It's just not his gig, which just makes him even more like badass.
Yeah. It's honorable. Yeah. Yeah.
It really is. It is. And yeah, he does it for good reasons. But regardless, so I had this like super team really, and I was kind of like intimidated. I'm like, oh my God, these guys are total crushers. And so the idea was to try to do this link up of these peaks, and it was just going to, I'd wait. I suggested it to them. It was, and they both got inspired by it. And we waited for a good weather window because I wanted to give us 72 hours of good weather to give us some wiggle room in case something went wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's not always obvious. And, so I was studying the weather, and finally it looked like the it was there. And so I sent them a note, and they both agreed to come. And we met up the night before and sort of went through a little bit of a plan. And it got going bright and early the next morning around 5 a.m. I think it was. And we were moving quite efficiently. I think in the first 4 hours we'd already knocked off 4 peaks, and feeling really psyched about the day, and we're moving quite well. And I was really enjoying watching Nick and Dakota move through that kind of terrain. And it just be clear, this isn't a trail run. Like this is real mountains. Like we're moving, people do this as like mountains. Each of these peaks is an objective in itself, as a mountaineering objective for people in itself. And so we covered about 4 peaks, and Nick and Dakota were, as I said, were moving really, really well, and they were just ahead of me. And we were going at something called Eisenhower Tower, which isn't even really a mountain on the route. It's just sort of another feature that you're supposed to cover. I wouldn't have counted it as one of the peaks, and I didn't even really know it existed, by looking at the maps. And Nick and Dakota moved up ahead of me, and it's a big cliffy feature. So it's a series of like jagged. If you were to picture a Lego mountain, that's what it looks like. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And they moved ahead of me, and I was following the same route as them, trying to chase them up. And all of a sudden, I pulled on a rock, and something about it felt like the size of a small fridge block pulled out on me. And I still get the like horrible flashbacks to it, and the smell of the rock is like this like sulfurous smell, and this, you can hear it cracking, and it felt it pull out towards me, and next thing I knew, I was free falling backwards, somersaulting down this series of ledges, hitting my head and just like going tumbling. And I remember at one point actually slowing down a little bit, and I was conscious through this whole process. I'm like, oh my God, I'm alive. Okay, I'm gonna stop. And then I started falling again. And I have this other flashback, which I get almost nightly still. It's quite like, just as I'm falling asleep at night, it like jars me awake. And it's the picture of the mountains behind me flipped upside down. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a crazy sight, and that might be the last thing I ever see. And so I ended up falling several hundred feet, not entirely sure how much, but 200 plus feet. And ended up stopping face down in a pile of scree at the bottom of the mountain. And fortunately I stopped there because there was more cliffs and ledges below me, and which, who knows what would have happened. But so I found myself face down, and I remember just seeing blood pooling in front of me, and I didn't like that. And so I rolled myself onto my back, and then the second I did that, I was like, okay, you can't move. Like, you just had a very serious accident. And I started doing a bit of self-assessment. I wiggled my toes, and I could wiggle my toes, which actually gave me incredible joy. Yeah. The fact that I could wiggle them. But I knew that my ankle was incredible. It was in a lot of pain. I knew my hip was in a lot of pain, and I knew that my back really hurt. But I told myself I had to just stay calm and not move. And Nick and Dakota, who actually saw me fall, and it was really powerful this weekend getting to talk to them. We'll get into this a bit later, but just what it's like to witness your friend die, essentially. That's what they thought. They were positive that they saw me dying, which is a horrible thought, and it gives me shivers right now. And so they made their way down to me very cautiously, they said. And when they got down to me, they found that I was conscious, and I was able to talk to them it was quite lucid, which I think gave them quite a sense of relief. And even though my face was cut up, I wasn't mangled really badly. And so I think that also helped them. And they are two of the perfect people to have in that kind of scenario, because they both just remained perfectly calm and didn't panic. And they both had some training in wilderness first aid and had a lot of experience as well.
Yeah.
And so I was able to tell them where my cell phone was in my pack, and also where my inReach was, which we brought along. And at the previous peak, we noticed that there was a cell signal. And so Nick ran up to the previous mountain and deployed the inReach, and was able to call search and rescue. And fortunately, we have an incredible search and rescue network in those parks. And so within an hour and a half, they'd flown past us and located us. They were actually doing a training mission in the area, looking for unexploded avalanche bombs, because it's close to the highway. They bomb the area in the winter. And so they'd spotted us, and I remember them flying over top of us. And I'm like, oh my God, there they are. They were safe. But then they took off. And I'm like, oh shit, they haven't seen us. But they had to go, and what they did is they had to go and get a rescuer to long line people in to take them into the area. And they had to change pilots, because not all pilots are certified to bring in a rescuer into that area. And so they left, and I had this moment of panic, basically, that they hadn't seen us. But Nick and Dakota helped calm me, and they kept me warm. They put clothes on me, I had a space blanket with me, and a small bivy sack. And they were giving me a little bit of water and just trying to clear the area a little bit as well, because it was still like very, very treacherous terrain, and it's not an easy area to stage a rescue from. Finally, the helicopter flew back to us, but we were quite close to a glacier. And so there's strong winds coming off the glacier, and so it's not easy for the helicopter pilot to fly in there. And they based themselves below me. And I remember all I could see was the rotor of the plane, the helicopter, and I just focused on the rotor and just willing it to move, because the second I knew it was moving, that meant that they were actually going to bring a rescuer to me. And I just sat there staring at it, just hoping it would move. And finally, they long lined somebody in. They were able to package me, so put me on a spinal board, package me, and the rescuers in that area, they'll cover like a major wound, but they don't give you any pain meds. Their only goal is to get you out of there,
right,
and to get you to safety and get you to medical team. So they long lined me out, which was also terrifying, because I'm on the spinal board, fully packaged up. So all I've got is this small line of sight, and I can just see this cable up to this helicopter, and I'm like, this is how I'm actually going to die now. This cable's going to, like your mind's just going in all places. And I was very scared. And there's just the sensory overload as you're being flown through the air. And then they flew me to the Rogers Pass Visitor Center, which was a few kilometers away. And there was an air ambulance crew waiting for me, and they triaged me for over an hour in the parking lot, trying to stabilize me. And they said that they've never seen somebody in that bad a state who was still that conscious and with it. So I was able to interact with them and tell them what I was feeling. I don't really remember much of this. And from there, they gave me ketamine, which was a wild drug, and I still can't remember. I've never used it recreationally, but it was certainly a crazy experience. And it added to the fact that I was in this shock and pain, and in this helicopter, and being given these very powerful narcotics. I get flashbacks to that feeling as well, which is a little scary. And they flew me an hour and a half to a major trauma center, where I was then taken into surgery, and they worked on me for over 8 hours. And turned out I'd broken my T8 to T11 in my thoracic spine. I'd sheared off the top of my iliac crest, which is the top of my hip bone. It had sheared right off, and essentially my foot, all the tendons and ligaments had ripped in my left foot, and they torn all the bone off with it. So it's called an avulsion fracture. And I had really deep lacerations down to the bone on any part of me that wasn't exposed. So all through my back and hip. And unfortunately, I had a pack on that had a small rope in it, and that protected my spine in quite a big way. Wow. And I had a helmet on because of the nature of training and moving through, that covered the back of my basal skull, which is really lucky too, because I kept hitting the back of my head. And there's a big scar up the back of my neck, but it didn't puncture my skull, fortunately. And I had just scars everywhere. Like I had stitches between every single knuckle, strangely enough, and like all across my arms and in various areas. It's quite a sight to see. And if chicks dig scars, then they really dig me. Laura might have something to say about that. But I remember when I finally came out of surgery, I had my mom was there, Laura, my fiance, was there, her mom was there, and Nick and Dakota were there, and apparently I was obviously quite drugged up at the time, but I remember asking, once I'd sort of come around a little bit, talking to the surgeon and asking him, classic athlete, what am I going to be able to do? Am I paralyzed? Am I going to be able to walk? I didn't know what had happened. He's like, no, you're likely going to be able to make a full recovery. You have you have good injuries. But I didn't know what that meant. I was like, do you actually know what a full recovery means to me? I was like, do you guys actually get it? It's like what I'm, and if I wasn't able to, then, I would have dealt with it. I would have learned how to handle it. But you know, I was basically asking, it's like, am I going to be able to run again? Am I going to be able to climb? Am I going to be able to ski? Am I going to be able to, like, you know, take my kids for, I don't have any kids now, but like, I'm going to go for a walk with them down in the future. And he said, yeah, you're probably, you know, you basically, it's like, if you're going to break your back, you're going to break your hip. Break the bones that you break and break them in the way that you did. You're really fortunate. Wow. And yeah, for whatever reason, it didn't, you know, it didn't damage my spinal column. I didn't have any major concussions, and I didn't, and I was alive. And you know, an inch or millimeter in either direction falls in a slightly different way, it would have been a very different story for me. Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, it's hard as someone hearing the story to process, and I can't even begin to imagine what it's like to process as the person who lived through it. I mean, even as you're talking through it, you mentioned, you know, being able to visually see these things and have the flashbacks to these moments, and I just, it makes the ending to this whole show, I know, it's just gonna be that much more powerful because I'm already like envisioning what you're having to go through. I do have a picture. Adam did share with us a photo from the accident. I obviously want to warn everyone that there is blood in the photo. It's not, you know, it's not bones popping out or anything like that, but it is a photo that he has shared publicly on his Instagram and other social media accounts, but it at least gives you perspective of what occurred on the top of the mountain. It's both Adam and Nick. Let me pull this up here, just so I'm going to show it now. But this is you. I'm assuming that you were not moved. This is where you came to rest, right?
That's where I came to rest. Yeah, yeah. And you can see blood on the rocks, and yeah, Nick's horrible haircut. No, but yeah, you can see my helmet in the background, which I still have, and it's cracked, and it actually has bits of my hair and scalp like still stuck to it, which is quite horrific. But I'm definitely keeping it. And yeah, you know, you can see I'm quite cut up. Yeah, it's pretty horrible, and you get a sense of what the terrain is like as well with those rocks.
Quite rocky. Yeah. I mean, if that's the scree field that you fell into, I can't imagine what the actual surfaces that you're climbing up were like. We have lots of questions coming in from the live chat room. So before we move forward with the story, I obviously want to get to some of these questions. Some of these are great. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, a question from Nathaniel in the chat room. Adam, can you elaborate on your mental state immediately after the injury? Also, how did your outlook change, if any, as your recovery progressed?
Yeah, so right after the surgery, I actually ended up having some really serious complications. My body didn't respond well at all to the medication I was on, and it was also in shock. And so I ended up, I had essentially, it's called stomach islets, but so my digestive system completely shut down, and I wasn't able to eat for 10 days. And at the same time, I just completely ballooned up because my body was just filling with fluids. And so all my muscles were atrophying, and I was swelling, and I was in tremendous pain. But I was also in this orthopedic ward with 3 other people, and it was probably the burliest room in the world. Because the guy across the hall from me was in a helicopter crash. The other guy to my left was hit by a semi as he was crossing, going to the bathroom in like a rest stop area. Then there was an elderly lady who'd fallen and broken her hip. And the lady had some visitors, but the 2 people across from me didn't have a single visitor the entire time I was there, which was just horrible. And I felt so sad for them. It would be so lonely and scary because my family, who lives around the world, my brother lives in Thailand, my father still lives in Nigeria, my mom lives in Vancouver Island, which is a several-hour flight away, and my fiance Laura lived in Calgary, which is an hour-and-a-half flight away. All basically flew to me right away. The second they heard something was up, they all came to me. And so I had this incredible love and support around me. And I was so thankful for that, because it just gave that amount of love and caring, I think, really helped with my healing process. And the fact that, so Laura, fiance, is a doctor, and she'd actually worked at the hospital that I was at during her clerkship. And so she was really able to help me through the entire process of working through the medical system, because it's scary, you're thrown into this new world, all these new words and languages, and and people are pressed for time. Especially in Canada, we've got this incredible public health system, but you know, the nurses, there's a limited amount of resource that, you know, they have to help a lot of people who are in really bad state. And so having an advocate and knowing what questions to ask and knowing how to, you know, just show empathy and show thanks and gratitude towards them for everything they're doing, you know, can really help your level of care that you receive. And like, I was literally relying on them to wipe my ass. Like I couldn't do that myself. It's just so humbling. And, you know, I've always prided myself on being a very independent, able, capable, physical human being. And I was anything but that. You know, like, as I said, the day before, I consider myself like a world-class mountain athlete. And here I was, I couldn't even wipe my own ass a day later. It's really, really humbling and very scary. And despite the fact that doctors are saying you're going to make a recovery, you also have a hard, like, you want to believe it, but you also don't. I don't know. But you don't care. I actually didn't really care. That was all I wanted. Like, honestly, through that whole process, all I wanted to do was fart. Like, because I was in so much pain from the gas building up in my stomach. I remember this, despite having all these like really deep lacerations across my body, this one night the gas buildup was so bad in my stomach. I just wanted any kind of relief. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning and I was in so much pain and agony. I just grabbed my legs as hard as I could and just squeezed them into my chest to try to like bellow out a fart. I remember doing that 2 or 3 times and like screaming as I was doing it, and finally getting this like tiny little like little squeaker, and it was like orgasmic. I remember I cried with joy at this tiny, despite like being in total pain everywhere, at that feeling. And then you know, having friends come and visit me, come in from Vancouver, which is a 6-hour drive away. Flying in, having Nick and Dakota come back and see me, and just started getting like messages from people from around the world. And it was just really emotional. I remember the first time I got wheeled outside and got to feel fresh air on my body. It was the same thing. It was just this incredible euphoria because I just love being outside. And the hospitals really aren't all that. They're not that nice. They're very sterile environments. And despite every little bump hurting as I was getting pushed, and we got this wheelchair and put every possible pillow and cushion around me. And every little bump hurt. It was just so worth it to get outside again. And yeah, I mean, I could go on telling these stories for hours, you know. So to sort of to move through it a little bit, you know, I wouldn't have been able to do any of that without the love and support of strangers in the hospital, the incredible support crew, and like really like nameless nurses. I wish I could remember most of it. I tried writing down as many names as possible and thanking them, but people would comment, you know, they're changing shifts at different hours of the night, and it's you know, and they're doing the most incredible things for you, and yeah, you're just so raw and bare, and then having the, as I said, the love and support of my friends and family was just amazing. And then from there, you know, slowly taking my first steps outside was incredible, and you know, getting this, having to go see physios and just constantly relying on other people to move forward it's been very humbling, and just learning how to move again. Like literally, I like to think that I'd more or less mastered my body. You know, I'd been a professional athlete since I was more or less 17 years old.
Yeah.
And I was 37 at the time. So I had a pretty good understanding how my body worked, but I didn't understand how this new body worked, which was a really interesting process. And I started doing these pain meditations, which were really, really, really good. Like just learning how to like accept the pain that my body was feeling and try to let it go. And I ended up taking up sketching with Laura, which was really cool. So just sitting outside in the mountains and just drawing, which was just a whole new perspective on the mountains, which was really powerful. And then just trying to have this deep appreciation for everything I could do. And the other thing I was really, really careful about and really became really conscious about was not setting any expectations on my recovery period. Not saying that, you know, tomorrow I must walk 10 steps because today I walked 8, because I didn't know what my body was going to be able to do from day to day.
Yeah.
And I didn't just set an arbitrary goal and fail, because there was no failure. Like, you know, like I was moving forward, I was making progress, I was healing, but I also had to accept my body was willing to do on a day-to-day basis and be okay with it. And the other thing too is I also didn't want to set any artificial limits either. Like, you know, I may be able to run a mile of it, but well, maybe I can run 100. You know, and I didn't want to set these artificial barriers. So I thought it might put undue pressure on me to try to accomplish things too quickly. but then it also might limit me a long time. Like, who knew? Maybe I'd become a better athlete. I'd have a better understanding of my body. I'd be able to do things I couldn't do before.
Sure.
I'd have a stronger mind. But the biggest thing through all of it was just making sure that I had a deep appreciation and not that I didn't before, but like I had this whole new gratitude for just being able to move and being able to do whatever it was I was able to do. And I've tried to take that into where I'm at now as well. Yeah.
I mean, this is hard to hear. This is great to hear. And obviously our live viewers are enjoying the stories, but also they're extremely empathetic. The question has been coming up, and Kim, you probably have it written there as well, just regarding the time frame of when you were admitted into the hospital. You mentioned your first surgery was September 1st, but how long were you in there before you were able to take those first steps? And when did you leave the hospital? What was that time frame?
Yeah, so I was actually, I took my first sort of attempted steps 3 days after the surgery. And I remember it was actually funny. The physio, the hospital physio came into my room. It was like, okay, we need to work on your endurance so you can go to the bathroom. I was like, that's 3 steps. You know what I could do? Yeah, I remember standing up and like falling to the ground basically.
Wow.
And so I was able to take a few steps initially, but I was in hospital for just over 2 weeks before I was released. And from there, I ended up having to spend a few days sort of in, it just more or less bedridden before we could drive home. And I was slowly starting to walk a little bit more, like a week after being in hospital, I was able to walk around the ward. And then, a couple of days later, twice around the ward. And, but what ended up happening is I was released and I slowly started to walk a little bit outside. I'd walk 400 meters or half a mile or so. I wasn't tracking it, but 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then I saw my doctor in Campbell, and he's like, I got some really bad news for you. I think you have a Liz Frank injury in your foot. And we're worried that you might do long-term damage. So you should have to go back in a wheelchair for 6 weeks, which was, I remember feeling so disheartened by that because I was really enjoying I was making forward progress. I was moving forward, and as an athlete, like we want to be progressing, we want to be building, we want to get stronger. And here I was feeling like I was regressing again and having to accept that as my new fate and having to be okay with it. And my understanding was that I needed to do this if I was ever going to have a hope of walking or running again. And so it was a little bit easier to manage, but still, I was really enjoying my walks. And so all of a sudden my walks became pushes. So Laura would have to take me through these pushes. The other thing that has been quite interesting about this process was my real appreciation for accessibility challenges. People in wheelchairs and sidewalks are not smooth. They are not. They are incredibly bumpy. And like anytime you have to go up and down the little ramp, no matter how wheelchair friendly they are not smooth rides. And I remember one of the first nights that I was allowed out of the hospital, my family wanted to do this dinner, and I really, really wanted to go. And I remember thinking I was putting on my best, clothes. I put on a hoodie, and I finally got dressed, right? And we called restaurants and found out one that said that they were wheelchair friendly, and this is one of the best restaurants in the town that I was in, Kamloops. And we go to this restaurant, it's ground level, so we wheeled me in, and after a few minutes I have to go to the bathroom, and so my brother pushes me to the bathroom, and supposedly wheelchair friendly bathroom, and there was a big fridge in the way. So we couldn't access the bathroom. And so it was just this real appreciation for how difficult, even though I just had I was only in a wheelchair for, just over a month. This small understanding, a small window into what people with accessibility issues have to deal with. And so I'm a big advocate for that, and just really raise my level of awareness, and also just how much help and support from other people you need to get in and out of a car, for instance, and how uncomfortable things can be. I kind of forgot the question I was answering, but no, I think it was just time frame.
Yeah.
So after 6 weeks, I was allowed to start going into the water. So I started, getting in the pool a little bit and floating. And I became really good friends with all the Canmore senior citizens. We go for our little noon swims. You know, we compare broken hip stories, which is pretty funny. And the 70-year-old women, you know, like, really sucks to break a hip, doesn't it? Yeah. And yeah, so I was able to do that, and I started doing more and more physio. And like the physio though was like teaching me how to place my foot so I could go up a step, and how to use a cane properly, how to get in and out of the bathtub, get in and out of the shower. So we're talking like really, really simple things here. And from then I was able to start walking a little bit more, and eventually it was early, I believe it was end of October. Yeah, end of October. So about 2 months later, I was finally feeling a little bit stronger. I was able to like stand on my own 2 feet without a walker quite comfortably. And it's like, I really want to go fly fishing. I just want to go do something like feels outdoorsy. And so Laura was like, okay. And so we went down to this little area in Banff, which is a spectacular area. And I had my cane in one hand and like making my way down into the water and get into the water's edge of my waders. And it starts snowing a little bit. I'm like, this is so cool. I'm feeling the elements of my body again. I love this. And I take a step into the water and I sink into mud. And I sink like almost up to my knees. And I'm fully stuck. I'm not strong enough to stabilize myself. And so at that, Laura, like, and it just felt so like pathetic. You know, I was like, I just couldn't do this. I was like, this one thing that I really want to do, and I'm not able to do it, is fishing. You know, like I'm not strong enough to go fishing. And so Laura had to like drag me out of the mud, and I felt sorry for myself. And then I was like, great, you know, you're out doing what you want to do. Like, so I sat on the shore and was just casting from the shore instead. And yeah, but then from there, I ended up getting stronger, and started going for hillier hikes and slightly more mountainous hikes, and we ended up going to Hawaii for a vacation, and from there started doing like 2-hour walks in the hills around on the North Shore, which is spectacular. And I was just enjoying the warm weather, and I think it was quite good for my body to feel that. I started to get a bit more mobile and started playing in the ocean a little bit. And I think I mentioned I grew up in West Africa, and I spent a lot of my childhood surfing, and I was like, I really want to go stand-up paddleboarding. I think I can do this. And we rented stand-up paddle boards, and I stood up on the board, and I instantly fell in the water. And I wasn't strong enough to pull myself on the board. So I forgot that, I kind of took it for granted because I spent my childhood doing this, but there's so much proprioception involved in stand-up paddleboarding, and my ankle and hip weren't strong enough to support me. And I just really wanted to catch a wave. I was like, just wanted to feel something, like do something adventurous. And so I kind of like, got Laura to like push me onto a wave so I could feel that little initial getting into a wave, and I was super stoked with that. But once again, it was really humbling, and then relying on somebody else to help me move forward. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing to hear that you were working back from zero, essentially. I mean, you were relearning how to walk, how to feel the elements. And I don't know how you can go from that to Hardrock. Like, this is what's incredible. And the live viewers, this is what they're incredibly inspired.
Yeah.
You can just tell by the conversations that people are like, this is insane. But then to also know that you were at this point in October, November, December, and managed to get to Hardrock this year. So the quick question that popped up in the chat room was regarding registration. So had you dropped your name into the lottery before the accident, or was it something that you did after?
No, I was in a hospital when I put my name in for the application.
Wow.
I remember seeing that it was coming up, and I was like, well, this is a bit crazy, but I can always put my name in, and the doctor said I'm going to recover, so let's put my name in, and if it doesn't work out, I can always withdraw my name, but I can't apply after a certain date. So and the odds of me getting in are pretty slim anyway. So what am I going to lose by doing this? And so I put my name in, and I don't think I told anybody, but I did it. Not initially. Obviously, I had to tell people once my name got drawn. But and I remember when my name got drawn, it was kind of one of the, and this is actually probably happens. This also happened the first time I got drawn for Hardrock. I'm like, yay, shit! Like I got and but this time it was really different. I was like, well, that may have been really stupid, but it was also I don't know. I just felt it was nice to feel part of the scene again, just by getting drawn.
Yeah.
And so it was, it happened when I was in hospital bed when I couldn't move. Yeah.
That makes it that much more impressive and special. Before we move into the Hardrock side of things, let's get to a couple live viewer questions here because they've been piling up.
Yeah, a question from Stephanie. How is it to get back to running in the technical stuff? Not so much thinking about the physical, but the mental fear.
Yeah. So yeah, the running and technical stuff hasn't been too big of a challenge. I mean, it's been hard physically, like in terms of like learning how to balance and move through terrain, and my ankles. So my feet are still, the nerves of my feet are still very alive all the time. They're still constantly tingling. So I don't have great feeling in my feet yet. But I'm strong enough and I'm able to move quite like more or less well through it. But the first time I did anything with a little bit of exposure, I remember actually in Hawaii going on a hike, and there's a little bit of scrambling involved, and it was totally my fault. I'm kind of adventurous by nature and sort of by default like choosing interesting looking areas, and got up somewhere. I'm like, okay, and I got quite scared of being up there and like tapping the rock a lot and so just getting really gripped. And throughout the winter I was ski touring quite a bit, and I did, the more skiing I would do, it sort of got a little bit steeper with the terrain. And there was one day we were out skiing, we were actually going to rappel into a couloir, and there's quite a lot of exposure on the skin up, and the stability wasn't great. And I got really scared, and I just sort of fell into the mountain for a second and just sat there kind of hyperventilating, trying to convince myself to move forward. And I was like, it's more dangerous to be this gripped and scared. You got to just relax. And at the end of the day, though, I mean, if I don't feel like doing something, I'm not going to go and do it. And so, it's okay to back away from things as well. And I think that's a very, very important lesson. It's, there's one of my good friends who's a very famous alpinist. His name's Will Gadd. He's the guy who climbed up Niagara Falls a couple of years ago. His big motto is, bail early, bail often on mountain objectives. And so I've really taken that to heart this winter, and I definitely bailed on a lot of objectives before I might have pushed through them. And so, yeah, it's just learning that it's okay to say no to things has been it for sure. And just also accepting that I'm not quite as strong as I once was, and certain things I just can't do and may not ever be able to do, and accepting that. Yeah.
Let's get another question.
Yeah, a question from Robert in the chat room. Curious how quickly were you able to ramp up to prepare for Hardrock? So how quickly were you able to get into long run situations?
Yeah, I mean we're going from learning to walk again to, I'm imagining, running your first 5K distance. You're like celebrating the amazing feeling of 3.1 miles. When did you start ramping up to the bigger mileage?
Yeah. So I actually spent most of the winter ski touring. Because it was quite easy on my body. The skiing itself I wasn't excellent at. My ankle and hip weren't quite strong enough, but I could go uphill really well without it hurting too much. The angle was perfect, and so I could get a lot of strength that way, and I could get back in the mountains, which was really good. And you can spend really long days ski touring, and it doesn't beat you down too badly. And it was like, oh, Killian's probably doing this. Like, this probably works for me too. So I was able to get a lot of strength that way. And then I was doing really, really short runs. And I think I started running. The first real runs I did were early December, and by run I mean like 30-second run. Right. And then I started in on an Ultra G machine. So I got in one of those machines that you can. It's like a big skirt around you, and you can run at a percentage of your body weight. So it was a lot easier to get my run form back at that rate. And I started doing some strength and conditioning work and mobility work to try to get some range of motion. Yeah, I mean, I probably would say, but I didn't start doing. I probably, relative to the training I used to do, I haven't really done that much training in terms of pure running. But I did 6 weeks ago. I did a 55-kilometer run with. So it was 30. It's like 31 miles, but it has 18,000 feet of elevation gain in it. And so when I did that, I was like, okay, I think I can do Hardrock. Nice. It's a really, really burly day, and it took me over 10 hours. It was like 10 and a half hours, and my previous best time was about 9 hours on it. So I was like, okay, I can move pretty well. And so that gave me a lot of confidence. But yeah, it was a slow process, but I didn't really, I said I probably didn't really start running until March or April. I went with this philosophy that frequency was going to be better than volume. So I tried to be really frequent, and I was really conscious not to overdo it and not to injure myself. And a couple months ago, I was kind of noticing that I wasn't really doing anything structured. So I actually contacted Jason Coop, and just because I was like, I just want to have a bit of structure to what I'm doing. I want to make sure I'm not, and I don't have that much time either. And so I want to know if there's anything I need to do to like speed up the process. And so we had a little bit, some good conversation. I was more or less doing what he suggested, but it was just something nice about having something written on paper as well to do and to sort of put it in somebody else's hands. But even when I was working with, having worked with him, there was also quite a lot of, me just listening to my body being like, today is not a good day to do that whole workout. It just doesn't make sense to do it today. So let's postpone it by a day, or I'm feeling quite good today, so let me do a bit more. So I had a program, but there was also quite a lot of flexibility, and it was great working with him through that process as well.
And we've had him on the show before, and Jason's stand-up dude, probably one of the best in the business, and extremely knowledgeable in all things training and structure and stuff like that. He's got a great book for those who are maybe watching live, wondering who's Jason Coop. But he's also a coach available to everyone, and that's great.
Coach some great people.
Yeah.
Some of the best. Yeah, some of the best on the planet, which is also something to be mentioned. I'm really curious now. So you've done Hardrock before, and now after this incredible recovery, what was it like arriving again at this? It's difficult because you've experienced it firsthand. And like, what was it like to toe the line and to see the familiar faces? And what was it different? Was it great? And Jason Coop's actually in the chat room. What's up, Coop? Good to see him.
Yeah, thanks for everything. I really appreciate it. No, I was going to say arriving at Selgin was really emotional, and I was really scared. I was really, really scared of what I was going to have to face and what I was going to deal with. And in some of my runs going into it, you start visualizing what the process is like, and I actually broke down and cried a few times during my training runs, just thinking about it and thinking about the emotions I was probably going to feel out there, and I'm trying to convince myself that it was going to be okay to not, be winning the race or trying to win it. That my goal was really to finish, and trying to convince myself of that. But then seeing the familiar faces and the community support, that race is really, really something else. Like there's just such a solidarity and understanding that people that are there really love being in the mountains and have a deep understanding. And I think because of that too, a lot of them could really relate to, and could have pictured themselves having accidents like I did. A lot of them probably do very similar activities. And, with Dave Mackey's accident as well.
Right.
It's been very real for a lot of people. So I think there's a lot of people seeing me there, and I've known a lot of these athletes for a long time. Like, we've raced against each other, a lot of other races, and see each other, and we follow each other on social media, and, you get inspired by other people doing cool stuff, and it's awesome. So it was really, really powerful when I started talking to people and just getting hugs from people telling me how great it was to see me, and having Dakota and Nick there as my pacers, and having Gary Robbins, who's a really good friend from Canada, and Anne-Marie Madden, who's another Canadian runner who both paced me at Hardrock previously, both happened to be there as well. Was just so amazing to have this support network around me at the race. It was very emotional from the moment I walked into town, but I was scared. I was really, really scared. I'm not afraid about that. Yeah.
Were there moments that you experienced during this race that were difficult beyond, physically difficult, I can imagine, but mentally difficult? Were there lows? And let's talk about some of that.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was crazy. So one of the things I hadn't really thought about, well, there's a couple of things I hadn't really thought about. The first thing was when they called us to the start line, I lined up at the front because it's a race and that's what I do. I line up at the front because I'm there to race. And I hadn't thought about that. And, the gun went off, and I start running with the lead group because that's what I do. That's what I've always done. And and the race doesn't really go out that fast. And so I was able to run with them for a little bit. But then after a few miles, I couldn't. I was watching them run away, and my ego just took this huge beating. I'm like, it was very symbolic. It was like I had to let go of the athlete that I was and accept the athlete that I am on this day. And that was really, really hard for me. And I actually stopped and walked and started crying.
Mm.
And it was very cathartic though, but it was very much me letting go of something. And Anna Frost actually ran past me at that point, and she stopped and gave me a big hug. And she said, "It's okay." Like it was really lovely actually. She stopped and said, "It's lovely." And she's like, "You know, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You have nothing to prove. Like you don't have to be out here if you don't want to. Like you, everybody thinks it's incredible that you're just up, that you know even are here trying to do this thing." And it was just really nice to be given that permission, you know, and just being told that it was going to be okay. But because my mind still, you know, I'm still Adam Campbell, this, you know, guy who is like at the top of the sport.
You're right.
And people are going to think less of me if I'm not. I'm like, no, that's not true, you know, but that's a hard thing to let go of. And the other thing I hadn't really counted on mentally was, because I've gone through this really difficult physical challenge and faced a lot of things, because it was okay for me to drop out. It would have been okay. I could have dropped out at any point. That option was always so on the table for me, which I've never experienced a 100-miler before or any other race. Any other race I've ever done, it's not an option. I'm not dropping out unless I'm like really, really hurt. And this one, I could drop out at any point and people would congratulate me and say, "Well job. Like, man, you ran 50 miles of Hardrock. That's incredible. Yeah. You ran 30 miles of Hardrock. That's incredible." So anytime I came to an aid station, I had the option, like a very legitimate option of dropping out. So coming up with a reason to not drop out was really hard. It was, so I hadn't counted on that. And quite literally, every time I was going in, I'd have these massive energy lows and these internal debates about whether or not I should continue and whether it was worth it or not. And then coming down into Telluride, I'm not exactly sure what happened, but the footbed I broke, my left foot, like something happened to it, and every step just became increasingly painful. And from Telluride's still 30 plus miles out.
Right.
And I didn't run a step from Telluride to the finish line. I couldn't. I walked the entire way, and I was actually going faster uphill than it was downhill because it hurt so much.
Wow.
And the longer I went, the more it hurt. And Nick Elson was with me through this, and I was hobbling. I've never moved so slowly in my life. It took me over 4 hours to do the last 7 miles, and I was moving forward the entire time. I was going that slowly, and it's all downhill.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'd stopped once or twice just because I was in so much pain. I just needed a mental break.
Yeah.
But I was more or less moving forward, and so I was inching along, just inching. And all these people were passing me on the course and congratulating me and saying, "Job well done." And I'll be honest, I was jealous. I was jealous that they could run because they were going to be done sooner. And I was just in so much pain, and I just wanted it to be over. And I just wanted to be able to run a step, and I would try to run a step, and I would just get this wave of disappointment at the pain. And so I had to just convince myself that, you know, I was moving forward. So I was making progress. I was going to get there, but it was just going to take time. But I've been going for 30 hours. Like, I don't want to be out here for another 4 hours. I want to be finished. Like, I just want this thing over. I don't want to be hurting anymore. I don't want to be tired anymore. And so, but at the same time, also feeling the sense of like, you can't feel this way. You have to appreciate the fact that you're in this beautiful setting and you're doing this incredible thing, and it's awesome. And so I had these like competing senses going on. It was really, really, and I did feel that appreciation. I did love being out there, and it's so beautiful and so spectacular and harder than you could ever imagine, but also hating it at the same time and just wanting it to be over. Yeah, it was really, really, really wild battle of emotions for me, for sure.
Did you ever have doubt of finishing, or was that by that point? I mean, was by that point, like even by Kroger's or any of those points, was it a strong enough sensation to finish?
So anything after almost every aid station after Telluride, I thought I was going to drop out. I was convinced I was going to drop out. I was like, I'm done. I'm going to get to the aid station. I'm just going to call it. And then I'd get there and I wouldn't. I'd get up and keep walking. But no, I was convinced I was not going to finish it. And I'd convinced myself I wasn't going to. I'd given myself permission to quit. But for whatever reason, I would just keep putting one foot in front of the other, moving forward. And I refused to let myself spend too much time at aid stations because I figured if I spent too much time there, I was going to drop out.
Yeah.
So it was wild. But I just also want to say the energy I was getting from everybody, like almost everybody who passed me would stop and say, "It is so amazing to see you out here." And that meant so much to me. So much to me. And there's so much solidarity for everybody out there. And from volunteers at aid stations to race marshals to people taking photographs to friends to crew on other team for other runners and fellow runners. It was wild.
There's some incredible footage I Run Far shot, Brian shot, of you coming to the finish, which I can only imagine what that sort of experience was like. What was it for you those last 2 miles as you cross the river and you start coming into town, and what was going through your mind at that point?
So yeah, those last miles were amazing. So my entire crew of Anne-Marie and Nick and Aaron and Dakota were waiting for me at the river, and Jason was there as well. And I crossed the river and I just started bawling because I knew I would make it. Like, essentially at that point you've left the mountain. Every step on the way down hurt. Every single step. Anytime there's a little rock in it, like every step scared me. But I knew that the terrain was flatter and more moderate heading in. And so Nick and Dakota walked with me to the finish line from the river. And Nick had spent the previous 12 and a half hours with me. And yeah, so they walked with me and we just joked and chatted and sort of, it was just really, really lovely. And then finally, when we turned down towards the finish line, I could see this group of fellow competitors who'd come out and spectators who'd come out to cheer me on to the finish line. It was so powerful. And I saw Anna Frost there and Mike Foote and Jason Schlarb and Carl Meltzer and all these other people who'd finished who took time. They were probably exhausted, but they were there at the finish line cheering and hugging. And when I finally saw Dale, the race organizer, he was just bawling. And yeah, I just wanted to hug and thank everybody for being there for me, and Jason. And yeah, it was a really, really wild, I'm bawling up just thinking about it right now. And yeah, it was so powerful and so moving, and a huge relief to be done moving, to be honest. Yeah. But yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
I'm speechless, and it's just always an honor to have a guest like you on the show. But your story is so unique and inspiring, and it's something that I hope everyone gets a chance to watch tonight's episode and at least listen to Adam talk about this, because it proves that, not to sound cliche, but so much is possible for so many people who think it's impossible. And right. As someone who, I would love to run Hardrock someday, just the race scares the shit out of me. But knowing that someone can come from absolute zero, not being able to walk to the bathroom, and being able to complete the race, it's incredibly inspiring, Adam. We have a lot of live questions, and I feel like we can probably get to a couple of those before we move into the post show. We'll have Adam on as long as Adam can hang out. We'll have him in the post show with our Patreon crew, but let's get to at least a couple of these before we wrap up the show.
Yeah, you kind of just touched on this, but Nathaniel was asking, what does completing the run mean to you?
Oh, I'm still coming to terms with that. It's I don't really have a good answer yet. It's it was another step forward, and it was it's really hard to say. I wish I had a more eloquent answer for that. I don't have one yet, because it was incredible to set this really ambitious goal and to achieve it. But what it really means, though, is I was able to surround myself with friends and family, and once again, it was really, really analogous to my time in hospital, which I found really interesting, because when I was in hospital, I was relying on these strangers to help me get through really basic tasks. And I think that's very similar to, volunteers at aid stations doing that for you. I really had to rely on friends and family to support me, which, I had to through the training as well as through the race with my crew. And then, these experts are hosting the race, like your like my medical support team, which are like your doctors and everything. So it really was sort of like a bigger testament. And also just a thank you to everybody who's helped me to get to where I am now, because I wouldn't be where I'm at without the support of so many people. And, and if this could even inspire just a couple people, that would be amazing. The day before the race, totally out of the blue, I got an email from somebody who was in a hospital bed. He's like, I'm a mountain biker, and I just had a really bad accident, and I've broken my back. And I was looking up athletes who've come back from accidents, and I saw your name. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how you've been able to do it. I haven't emailed him back yet, because I got this email the day before the race. But it was, and through my entire recovery process, I received words of encouragement from people who've had really bad accidents, and I've had people reach out to me who've had accidents. So there's this incredible solidarity as well. And so if I can give a little bit of hope to somebody who's having a rough day, or a struggle, whether it's emotional or physical or whatever, a little bit of inspiration is, it's really, really special to be able to do that. So,
I mean, him hearing this story is going to be pretty incredible. The fact that you were able to come back and do something so incredibly challenging, and you mentioned you hope that it would help inspire some people. Surely has, and it surely will. It'll continue to inspire people. It's inspired me and Kim, and this whole weekend was just amazing, man. It was amazing to be able to follow from afar.
I think I just want to qualify that though a little bit. So this was like a really audacious and ambitious goal, and it's something that fortunately my injuries allowed me to accomplish it. For other people, if I'd had more serious injuries, and if things, if my recovery hadn't been quite so complete, something less ambitious would have just been as noteworthy. For somebody, it may just be being able to take a step. For somebody, may just be able to stand up once. For somebody, it may just be able to, get to a position where they can hold their child. That's their hard rock. It's really, it's very, very individual. I'm just incredibly fortunate that the nature of my injuries allowed me to do something like this, but so I was inches away from it not. And yeah, don't be afraid to dream big either.
If you were to have any words of encouragement for people out there, maybe who are going through a rough time and need that bit of inspiration, maybe what would some of those words be?
Yeah. So one of the things that I found really helped me was trying to find appreciation and gratitude in things in your day-to-day life, because I found that the more gratitude and appreciation I have been able to give outwardly, the more I've received, which has just been really empowering. I think that the real healing power to that. So find what you can do and do it, and then be very gentle on yourself as well, and just accept that, your body or your life on certain days may be a challenge, and that's okay. It's okay to feel pain. It's okay to be a little sad sometimes, and accept that and be okay with that in that moment, but then still look for gratitude in things that you're doing. That to me has been a real source of energy and strength as well.
It's an honor to have you on the show, especially so soon after such an incredible accomplishment. Hardrock 100 was just days ago, so I can imagine you have plenty of recovery to do in the coming days, which probably will include lots of food, lots of sleep. Do you have immediate plans to do anything else? What's next for Adam Campbell?
Well, I'm getting married in 2 weeks.
Yeah, yes, that's so great. That's great news.
No, so one of the things I didn't mention is when I was in Hawaii in November, I was in paddleboarding, but we went for a really nice hike and went body surfing in Waimea Bay, and I was sort of pretending to boulder a little bit. I actually proposed at Waimea Bay, and we're getting married in 2 weeks. So actually one of my number one rules going into Hardrock for myself was I could not injure myself so badly that I wasn't able to dance in 2 weeks.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I have to take care of this foot. It's elevated, and so I'm actually lying in my bed with my foot elevated right now, because I have to be able to dance. So that's the golden rule right now for me. Yeah, and it's going to be once again another amazing celebration of friends and family, and just showing gratitude to everybody. And Laura has been she was such an incredible rock to me through all of this, and it really it dramatically changed the nature of our relationship in quite a profound way. And I really, really owe her so much.
I love that. There's a funny joke in the chat room. I'll ruin the moment with that. But
Yeah,
Scott,
do it. That's awesome.
Scott mentions that Hardrock will be a walk in the park compared to marriage, buddy. Good joke. But
was that Scott's joke or was that your joke?
It's my joke. I made it up. Have fun with marriage, Adam. No, it's amazing, and I'm really, really, really happy for you guys. We're gonna wrap up our main show with Adam. We will have him in the post show. I want to commend him on an incredible finish. Just over 33 hours, Adam managed to complete the Hardrock 100 mere months after a near-death fall on top of a mountain, and it's an incredibly inspiring story. I will be back listening to this podcast quite often just to hear Adam talk about his adventure and his experience, and I'm in awe. I can't imagine what it's been like for you, Adam. Your stories, I know, kind of put it into perspective. I can't even imagine. It's great to have you on the show. We'll have Adam in the post show. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the post show or how that works Mondays here after Ginger Runner Live, the Patreon supporters get a chance to interact with our guests every single Monday with rapid fire questions and stuff that didn't get asked during the main show. All you have to do to join the Patreon crew is to go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner for as little as $1 a month, which is less than a quarter of a latte from Starbucks a month. You get to join all of the Patreon post shows, which is pretty great. So tonight we're going to have Adam for as long as he can hang out. Yeah, I was getting to that. I also want to make sure to thank our top tier Patreon supporter, Brian Sands, tonight. All of the Ginger Runner lives for the month of July are brought to you by Brian Sands. He was gracious. He's been a Patreon supporter for a while now, and he has now pledged the level that is basically bringing you Ginger Runner Live week after week after week. So thank you, Brian Sands. Incredible guy with a great story. And each week through the month of July, we'll be able to tell you a little bit more about Brian Sands and his practice and other things that he's doing over on the East Coast. But it's great to have him on board. And we'll even see him in the post show. He was in the main show tonight in the chat room, which is pretty cool. So thank you, Brian Sands. Tonight's show brought to you by him. Adam, where can people find, there's going to be questions that maybe don't get asked. Where can people find you on social media? Because I know that you reach out and you're pretty active, like on Instagram and stuff like that. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can get me on Facebook at Adam Campbell, on Instagram at Adamo1979, and on I'd have to actually. It's funny, I actually don't remember all my. I don't actually know all my handles.
Many of them are Campbell Adam 79.
Yeah, that's right. It's either Campbell Adam or Adamo. So my Twitter is Campbell Adam 79. However, if you just go to my website, alpinebureau.com, that links to everything. That's probably going to be your best bet.
Perfect.
Alpinebureau.com is the place to go.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Tonight's show, oh man, I'm so thankful to have Adam on, especially after such an incredible accomplishment. Yeah. Thank you everyone for watching live. We'll see you next Monday. Live shows every single Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you are a Patreon supporter, go over to Patreon right now because we're going to have Adam here in just a couple of seconds for the post show. Kim, am I forgetting anything?
I don't think so.
All right.
Yeah.
That's awesome, guys. Get out there, train hard, race hard, party hardest. I know I am. We'll see you guys next week for another Ginger Runner Live. Or we'll see you in the post show here in just a couple of seconds. Sweet. Have a good night.
Bye.
Ginger Runner.